So here it is, March 1st, and as you guys just saw, Kaleb and I have had a ton of fun these last few weeks shed hunting. We found quite a few antlers, but more importantly, we found some sides to a couple different bucks that we recognize and are going to be hunting in this upcoming season. And I'll start with this buck right here. This is a big right side to a buck we call half and half. Had a bunch of pictures of him in the 2019 season and just never really got out to hunt him. Kaleb was always hunting other bucks and I was hunting public land with Max. But we figured out that we actually think we have 3 years of history with this deer, dating back all the way to 2017 when Kaleb and I believe it was November 25th, 2017. Kaleb and I were hunting on this creek bottom and encountered this 3-year-old with a bad gimp. Didn't really think anything of it, didn't really even know if he was going to make it through the season. And then fast forward to 2018, we have this deer right here. And we believe that this is going to be the same deer, same core area. And Kaleb was actually hunting him pretty hard that season. Never caught up with him, and thank goodness he didn't, because as you can see, he blew up on this right side. And we call him half and half this year just because his left side, the one we haven't found yet, is not quite as big, more massive, but his tines are definitely shrunk or something. And that leads us to 2020. We really think this is going to be a deer that we can shoot, and the biggest plan that we have right now to get on him is the plan of plot down on that same creek bottom that we found him in 2017. We're really excited for that spot, really excited to hunt this buck, and hopefully we can put a close to that story. I think we've got a pretty good plan in place as long as he decides to show back up. But Kaleb actually found a bigger set, what was it, 2 weeks ago, to a buck that he knows and has a lot of history with as well.
Yeah, so a deer I'd like to introduce is a deer that I call Turkey Foot, and the reason I call him that is because his left side is G2. It's got 2 kickers coming off of it, and it looks a lot like a turkey foot. Just looking at the history on this deer, this past year I actually got permission from one of my uncles to go hunt on his farm, and the first project that I did was create a 3-acre frigid forage plot. And I put a scrape tree right in front of the stand, and that's where I hung up a cutty link. I was getting a lot of pictures on that plot, and that plot is actually on the west side of the farm. It was where I was doing most of my hunting at the beginning of the season. But one day in late October, I actually had the wrong wind for that side of the farm. So I went over to the east side of the farm, and lo and behold, that was where I had my only encounter with turkey foot that entire season. Fast forwarding to November, I actually had a lot of really good encounters with a lot of good deer in the west side of the farm in the frigid forage plot. A deer that I call the Old 10, another one that I call Haas, but no turkey foot. So going forward into December, still no sign of this deer, and I actually put cameras back up into the plot, and come January, first week of January, right after season closed, turkey foot showed back up on the west side of the farm. But it was funny, I was actually, 2 weeks ago, I was actually going to check my trail cameras, and I found his matched set laying right beside each other on the east side of the farm. So he wasn't spending a whole lot of time on the west side of the farm. Most of his time was spent on the east farm is what I'm thinking. I think that's his core area. So going into the 2020 season, like Josh said, we have a lot of projects that we need to take care of this spring and this summer. And the one project that I'm going to have for this deer in particular is putting a food source, either a kill plot or a transition plot, on the east side of the farm. But hopefully I can catch up with him next year. He's got a lot of really cool character, and who knows what this deer could turn into next season.
And speaking of next season, you know, one thing that's going to be very different for my story and Kaleb's story is that we're going to be hunting together hopefully the entire year. You know, we wanted to do it the past couple of seasons. It's just between being in college, work, nothing ever really lined up. We've only always been able to hunt a week here, a week there, but I think this coming year we're finally going to be able to team up, and I'm really excited for what's going to bring. I know we've got a lot of bucks that we're going to be after. We've still got some sheds to find, including this left side to half and half. It's funny, we've only been able to find his right side the last 2 seasons. But there's also a couple other bucks, one being the wide 10, and as you can tell, this deer could be world class next year if we can find him back. He's still holding both sides as of last week. We did film him running away. Kaleb would be hunting that deer if he does show up. In the next few weeks, we're going to be starting on those food plots, hopefully getting them established. Got some TSI work to do, some burns, but just a lot of fun projects to do. It's a great time of year to get ahead for the next season, and I know that Kaleb and I are both excited for what 2020 is going to bring.
As Josh showed us in that last segment, now is the time when it makes the most sense to get out and do some serious shed hunting. I'd say probably 75% of the bucks in our area at least have dropped their antlers or will within the next week. We hate to get out too early and put stress on the deer during the winter, so it makes sense to wait until at least a high percentage of the antlers are on the ground and then get walking. In this next segment, we're going to talk about something else that's the perfect timing for right now. The last part of February, first part of March is the perfect time to do some frost seeding in your food plots. We do this quite a bit with, if you follow up a big and beastie brassica planting with clover, or anytime you've got open ground to work with. So I'm going to let Jared talk about it. He put together a segment on frost seeding on his property, and then I'll come back again after that and talk a little bit more.
It's late February here, and I just got done frost seeding this little spot over my shoulder. Over the years, some of my best food plots have been the result of this method, frost seeding clover. And I think it's for a number of reasons, but really it comes down to a couple things. You're going to get earlier germination because that seed is already in the ground by the time the soil temperature warms up to the right temps in the spring. So it's already ready to germinate. And because of that, and also because of the fact you're not disturbing the soil, you're not tilling it up or anything, you're going to have less weed competition. So that clover really gets a head start and really grows well. The key with frost seeding is making sure you have soil exposed. So in this case, which is probably the ideal scenario, I had planted an annual, actually big and beastie this past fall in this spot. So that makes a perfect seed bed for frost seeding. There's a lot of soil exposed, and that seed will just sit there right on top of the soil, and basically Mother Nature does all the work for you. This time of year we get a lot of freeze thaw, and that heaving of the ground is what works that seed. Just the clover seeds are really small, so it doesn't take much, but it works it down just into the soil, just enough so that, like I said, it's at the perfect depth by the time the soil temperature warms up enough this spring. One thing you do want to make sure of when you are frost seeding is you want to put on a little bit heavier rate. So this pure trophy clover from Frigid Forge calls for 8 to 10 pounds an acre. I usually go a little bit on the high side, more like 10 to 12 pounds per acre. So like I said, a super simple method of planting a food plot. Just not much to it. Just make sure you have soil exposed so you get that good seed to soil contact. Go a little bit higher on the seed rate, and let Mother Nature do the work for you. That freeze thaw cycle will get that seed in the ground. This time of year, which is, like I said, late February and throughout March, here in the Midwest is a good time to do your frost seeding.
We've produced a bunch of these short segments like this last tip from Jared. We've got them on the website in the how-to section on the MidwestWhitetail.com website, and we also have the Midwest Whitetail how-to YouTube channel where you can find more of these types of tips. So now I want to talk a little bit more about our throwback hunts. We've been doing this now this is our second week, and one of my friends, when I first started hunting this farm and first started producing Midwest Whitetail, was a regular. And his name is Mike Sawyer, and I'm going to take you to the first buck that he killed during the 2008 season. He had a 2008 to remember. He killed a 175-inch deer in, I think it was November 12th, and he came back again on January 1st of 2009, and he killed a 180-some-inch basic 8-pointer with sticker points. So he killed a 355 inches of antler off my farm that year, and fortunately we had it all filmed so we can show it to you. But I'll start with the first one that he killed, and this was a stand that eventually came to be called Death Ridge. We had a lot of good hunts from this tree over the years, and I know I've talked about it many times on the show, but this was the first really big deer that we killed there. And I actually filmed this hunt. That back in the day, when Midwest Whitetail first started, I was a cameraman probably almost as often, if not more often, than I was the guy in front of the camera. I spent more time behind the camera than in front of it, just making sure we had enough content to keep the shows going. If I remember it right, it was a cool day, a little bit breezy, and normally you'd call this maybe the middle of the lull, or the first part of the lull in the rut. But in those days, my buck to doe ratio on this farm was so skewed toward bucks that we really didn't have much of a lull. The bucks would move all through the rut looking for does. I think the buck to doe ratio was actually flipped. And we'll talk about that at some point down the road, you know, how I did that and what the farm really looked like during that time. But there were more bucks on the farm than there were does. So there wasn't a lull. And this buck cruised through in the afternoon, middle of the afternoon. It was a deer that I'd filmed during the summer on that same ridge. At that time, it didn't really seem that impressive because, you know, the deer had his summer coat and, you know, just didn't look like the same deer as what he looked like in November. But anyway, this deer was passing and he was not going to come past the tree stand. I tried grunting at him first, and it's sort of like the last episode where I talked about calling. I grunted, he didn't hear it. And you have to do something to get their attention. You can't just assume that they didn't respond to the call just because they didn't come in. A lot of times they don't even hear it. It was windy enough and there was enough crunchy, dry leaves that this buck didn't hear the call. I knew that because he never stopped to look. So I finally went to the Snort-Wheeze and made a real shrill, high-pitched Snort-Wheeze, and that got his attention. Then he stopped and he turned and he worked down that ridge right to the stand, about a 20-yard shot.
That's Snickers. That. Got his shoulder. You didn't get his shoulder, Mike. You smoked him. I can't believe that just happened. Came up on the top. We grunted at him 3 or 4 times. Couldn't get him stopped. Bill Snort-Wheezed him at the top and he stopped and came right down the ridge. Gave me a perfect shot right here.
The lesson is pretty clear on that one. It's real similar to last week. Is you can call deer in, but they have to hear the call. And sometimes you have to back up your grunting with a Snort-Wheeze, or in some cases a rattling, because that will sometimes carry better through the woods than what the grunt call will too. But that high-pitched Snort-Wheeze sometimes is the difference maker. It was, like I said, it was an impressive deer, a heck of a buck, and we'll see next week how the schedule lays out, but I might come back again with the second deer that Mike killed during the 2008 season. I didn't film that one, but it was just as spectacular of a deer as the first one. So that's gonna wrap up our episode for this week. We're gonna get into the field pretty soon now with the food plotting. It's still a little bit early for that. We're still wrapping up some shed hunting and making some plans for the management projects that we're going to have on the farms, and we'll start bringing those to you now over the next few weeks. Probably show you a few more shed antlers and some more of these throwback hunts. Well, I appreciate you joining me. I'll see you right back here again next week for the next episode of Midwest Whitetail, and remember to always dream big.